Men didn't lose interest. They woke up. For decades, men were taught to pursue, invest, prove, and perform. Chase harder, pay more, try again. And for a long time, they did. But here's the dark psychology twist no one talks about. When effort is punished instead of rewarded, the human brain doesn't fight back. It withdraws. Something silent happened. Men stopped chasing not out of anger but calculation. They noticed the imbalance. Attention without appreciation. Effort without reciprocity. Commitment without respect. And once the brain connects pain to a behavior, it shuts that behavior down. Now the noise is everywhere. Where are the real men? Why won't anyone approach anymore? But the real question is darker. What happens psychologically when the hunters realize the hunt costs more than it gives? Because when pursuit dies, power shifts. And most people weren't ready for that shift. Here's what most people miss. Men didn't stop chasing women. They stopped chasing uncertainty. Dark psychology reveals a simple truth. The mind avoids unpredictable loss more than guaranteed failure. Rejection hurts, but wasted investment destroys motivation. Men watch the pattern repeat. Text first, pay first, plan first, get delayed replies, last-minute cancellations, phone addiction across the table. The brain starts keeping score, not emotionally, mathematically. And once a man realizes his time, money, and energy produce diminishing returns, he doesn't complain. He optimizes. That's why you don't hear rage. You hear silence. Silence is the most dangerous response psychologically, because it means emotional detachment has already happened. Women feel this absence as confusion. Men experience it as relief. But here's the unsettling part. Once detachment sets in, attraction cannot be forced back. And that's when panic replaces confidence. Because when men stop chasing, they also stop caring who notices. Power never disappears. It just changes hands. When men pulled back, something unexpected happened psychologically. Women didn't lose options. They lost leverage. Attention used to be guaranteed. Validation was constant. Pursuit was automatic. But dark psychology shows this clearly. Value feels highest only when it's about to be lost. Suddenly the messages slowed. Approaches stopped. The silence felt louder than rejection ever did. And here's the cruel twist. The men who disappeared weren't the reckless ones. They were the consistent ones, the reliable ones, the ones who would have stayed. The brain hates uncertainty, especially when it can't control the outcome. That's why confusion turns into frustration, and frustration turns into blame. He's intimidated. He's immature. He can't handle a strong woman. But those are defense mechanisms, psychological shields to avoid one painful realization. The game didn't break. The players left. And once people realize the prize no longer needs them, desperation quietly replaces confidence. Because when need disappears, negotiation power dies with it. Here's where dark psychology exposes the contradiction. For years, men were told, chasing is toxic, paying is oppressive, leading is controlling. So men listened. The human mind adapts faster than ideology. When rules change, behavior follows. Men stopped approaching, stopped insisting, stopped proving. And now the same voices ask, why don't men pursue anymore? Psychologically, this creates cognitive whiplash. One decade independence is celebrated. The next provision is demanded. The male brain doesn't argue with contradictions. It exits them. That's why this isn't rebellion. It's resignation. Men didn't revolt. They recalculated risk. Because here's the truth most won't say. You can't shame someone into desire. You can't guilt someone into effort. And when men realized that no matter what they did, it would still be wrong, they chose the only option that protects sanity. They stopped playing. This is where the illusion finally collapses. Women didn't lose men. They lost priority. Dark psychology teaches this. People don't miss what they control. They miss what withdraws. For years, attention felt infinite. One man left, another replaced him. Validation stacked endlessly. But when men stopped competing, something broke. The comparison advantage vanished. The leverage evaporated. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most women weren't rejected. They were deselected. The male brain began filtering differently. Not by beauty, not by excitement, but by cost versus peace. Does this bring calm or chaos? Does this add value or drain energy? Men didn't become heartless. They became selective. And once selectivity replaces desperation, the entire power dynamic flips. Because attention given freely feels meaningless, but attention withheld forces reflection. That reflection is painful, because it reveals a question no one wants to answer. If no one is chasing, what am I actually offering? Now we reach the phase most people misunderstand. Men didn't walk away to punish women. They walked away to protect themselves. Dark psychology calls this avoidance conditioning. When vulnerability is mocked, exploited, or weaponized, the mind builds armor. Men learned something brutal. Opening up reduced attraction. Consistency invited complacency. Availability killed mystery. So they adjusted. They stopped explaining themselves, stopped overgiving, stopped trying to be chosen. And something shocking happened. Their lives improved. Less anxiety, more focus, more peace. Women felt this shift instantly, not because men announced it, but because emotional access disappeared. And when access disappears, desire turns into pursuit. But here's the catch. Once a man learns he doesn't need romantic validation to feel complete, romantic leverage dies. That's when complaints become louder. That's when frustration turns public. Because indifference hurts more than rejection. And indifference is almost impossible to reverse. Here's the psychological irony no one warns about. When men stopped chasing, only one type of man kept approaching. The reckless ones. The emotionally unavailable ones. The men with nothing to lose. Dark psychology explains why. Men who value themselves calculate risk. Men who don't gamble. So the dating pool became distorted. Responsible men disappeared. Players multiplied. And then came the complaint. Why do I only attract toxic men? Because the stable ones left the arena. Men who wanted peace stopped engaging. Men who thrived on chaos stayed. This created a feedback loop. Women met worse men. Men observed worse outcomes. Both sides blamed each other. But the truth is colder. When you punish good behavior and reward bad behavior, the system doesn't break. It optimizes. And it optimized toward dysfunction. The men who could have built something real are now invisible. Not because they're weak, but because they're done offering value where none is returned. And once good men vanish, what's left isn't choice, it's consequence. Now the panic phase begins, not loud panic, quiet internal panic. Dark psychology shows that anxiety spikes when options shrink silently. No announcement, no warning, just absence. Friends start pairing off. Engagement photos appear. Baby announcements flood the feed. And suddenly, independence doesn't feel empowering anymore. It feels isolating. But here's the psychological twist. It's not loneliness that hurts most. It's comparison. The mind doesn't suffer in solitude. It suffers when it believes it's falling behind. That's why the frustration sounds like anger. That's why accountability turns into blame. Because admitting strategy failure is more painful than staying single. Meanwhile, men aren't miserable. They're calm. They replaced pursuit with purpose, romance with routine, validation with stability. And once a man builds a life that doesn't require a partner becomes optional. That realization terrifies those who relied on being needed instead of being valuable. Because when need disappears, negotiation power dies with it. Here's the point of no return. Men didn't just stop chasing. They redefined winning. Dark psychology reveals this clearly. When people change the definition of success, you can't lure them back with old rewards. Status used to matter. Being chosen meant validation. Marriage meant achievement. Now, peace is the status symbol. Men watched divorces destroy fathers, watched loyalty get punished, watched effort get taken for granted. So they adapted faster than anyone expected. They chose solitude over sacrifice, freedom over approval, stability over chaos. And the scariest part? Shame no longer works. You'll die alone. They reply internally, at least I'll die sane. Once shame loses power, control disappears. This is why dating advice aimed at manipulation is failing. The games are obvious. The tactics are transparent. Men share information now. They compare experiences. They warn each other. And when pattern recognition replaces hope, romance loses its grip. Because hope is fragile, but clarity is permanent. And clarity changes everything. This is the final truth most people avoid. Men didn't become cold. They became clear. Clear about what drains them. Clear about what costs too much. Clear about what no longer makes sense. Dark psychology teaches that when humans feel exploited, they don't seek revenge. they seek distance. That's what happened. The struggle women feel when men stop chasing isn't about love. It's about leverage. It's about realizing attention was never guaranteed. It was borrowed, and borrowed things can be taken back. The solution isn't louder demands. It isn't higher standards. It isn't shaming men into return. It's humility, reciprocity, value exchange, appreciation instead of entitlement, peace instead of performance, partnership instead of power. Some will adapt. They'll find love. Others will stay right and stay alone. Men already made their choice, not out of hate, but self-respect. So here's the real question. When the chase ends, do you evolve or double down?